And senior defense people who know better are tweeting this and now adding to this, sort of this idea that that Zelensky's trying to escalate this when all he's saying is, if we don't stop this now, it's going to get worse.
This is very appropriate music for our conversation with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine today, as he will now explain. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon from Kharkiv. A day of many air raid alarms, but so far pretty quiet. This is from a Ukrainian band, Antitla, and there's a lot of songs being written about the war. The past couple weeks, a couple bands have released songs about Bakhmut. And this one is called Fortress Bakhmut. And you really see, I mean, even as I go to cafes here in Kharkiv, I hear this song, and you see how close the suffering and the war is to everyone. I think almost everyone knows, or everyone I know, including me, knows someone who was wounded or has been killed in Bakhmut. And so even and I think the music both helps inspire people to keep going, but also reminds people of how difficult this is. And there is, in Bakhmut, it seems that the Russians are now about 3 miles away from totally encircling the city. Now, most of that city has been destroyed already because it's been shelled so often. Very intense fighting. They've been making, it seems, the past several days, advancing by about half a mile a day. So that's a steady advance. At the same time, we have some reports. It seems that there might be some of these Leopard tanks, the German-made Leopard tanks, might have arrived from Poland. There's a few that have arrived in Bakhmut. So it seems that Ukrainians are still putting up the fight, but it is very difficult. And of course, the reason why we're talking about Bakhmut is because the Russians have been unable to take any major cities. But nevertheless, it's a very intense situation. And a lot of people think that maybe it could fall anytime soon. And meanwhile, in this sort of atmosphere, I mean, we had so many indications, Bob, that there was going to be a huge attack before February 24th. I was hearing that back to January, and there hasn't been. Now, maybe this is a sign of Russian weakness or Ukrainian strength, but there is still this sense of apprehension, especially now, like through the night, there were alarms throughout the entire night. Another attempted a series of drone strikes toward Kyiv, the constant artillery battles in Zaporizhia and Donbass, but there has been no major missile strike. And then, in this, you can feel a bit, I mean, it's very intense, right? Like everywhere you go, you hear people singing about the battle of Bakhmut. You hear the air alarms. And then I received messages from people in America over the weekend, even from people I know well. I started to get text messages saying, how come there's no video of the war? And everyone was kind of sending me the same exact phrase. And I looked at Twitter and everyone was repeating this refrain. And it just showed up as of like Friday. And, there is more video than ever from this war. I mean, no one had cell phones or Instagram during the Spanish Civil War. We had Hemingway to tell us the story, and World War II. But we have so much evidence here, and still people will just sort of repeat these things. And I do think that a lot of this is, sort of Russian propaganda putting out these assertions and hoping that it spreads, and even hoping that it makes people here more careless in sharing videos. Because the Russians want to know where the positions are. And so it's a very intense, and I get a lot of sort of nasty comments, and this happens for anyone who's trying to tell the story of what's happening here, trying to break everyone's spirit. So it is a very intense propaganda situation. And then I heard this morning, and now it's trending on Twitter, there's a video from President Zelenskyy's press conference over the weekend. And a former Assistant Secretary of Defense under Donald Trump and retweeted a clip of this video. And friends of mine who used to work in the Pentagon, very smart people, tweeted this clip in which President Zelenskyy is saying that soon the United States is going to have to send its sons and daughters to fight just the way that Ukraine is now. And if you look right before that, he said, if Ukraine falls, if Ukraine loses, then Russia has made it clear they want more, that they've threatened to go to Poland. And Poland is a NATO country. And so all President Zelenskyy was saying, Ukrainians are doing the fighting. Give them the weapons to do it. Because if Ukraine falls, then Poland could be invaded next. In fact, today, Finland has announced they're building a wall with Russia. But Poland is a NATO country. And if Russia ever did attack Poland, the United States is bound by the NATO treaty to get into the war. And so that's what President Zelensky was saying. But everyone from very prominent American voices like Monica Crowley and so a lot of people in my former place of work, Fox News, and senior defense people who know better are tweeting this and now adding to this, so this idea that Zelensky's trying to escalate this when all he's saying is, if we don't stop this now, it's going to get worse. And in this whole environment right now, in Moldova, they have a freely elected government, President Maya Sandu. She's a very brave woman, but now there are pro-Russian protests happening in that country. And so all around this Eastern Europe, there's a lot of activity and a lot of fear about what Russia's up to next. Meanwhile, we have to deal with this huge information problem, which a lot of Americans are unfortunately not looking at very critically.
Two wars, one going on the ground there where you are in Ukraine and another on social media. It's really terrible that misinformation like that is going around, and it's crazy that well-respected people are pushing that. The Battle of Bakhmut, Joseph, I'm reading about Russian forces using those more experienced Wagner fighters, some of whom are former prisoners, and there's still 4,000 or 5,000 civilians there. Correct?
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, most of those are very old people who didn't want to leave their homes. They felt they had nowhere else to go. But it's very difficult now because there's not as much humanitarian aid. It's almost impossible. There was one road remaining by which people could access and leave Bakhmut. But I think now, by all reports, that is also the Russians almost have fire control of that road. And of course, a few weeks ago, we had, and I was talking with the medic friends yesterday, but the American medic, Marine veteran who was killed there. So it's even worse situation now. Yeah, and Bob, there was one of the people that tweeted this President Zelensky video is an American guy named Jack Posobiec. He's got 2 million followers on Twitter. He's a Navy veteran, and he actually came here to Ukraine to see this reality. And we were talking about this information problem, and I said at the beginning of the war, someone tweeted a picture of a fake of civilians holding wooden guns, and said, "Oh, this war is fake." And they were holding that because they had, there was the panicked early days of the war, and they had never held a gun before. And I said this to this guy Jack Posobiec, who came here very secretly, and he's like, "Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, there's a misinformation problem in America." So he left, and the next day I found out he was the same guy he was the guy that tweeted that got tens of thousands of retweets, and he got a little bit quieter, but he never apologized. He never said, "Wait a second, I need to correct this." And so we really are, I think as this gets more intense here, we're really facing a big honesty problem and a moral sort of integrity problem with a lot of our reporting in the United States, and it makes it very difficult here.
And we have to be smarter about how we consume news. Joseph, we certainly appreciate the straight story you give us here every morning. We shall talk tomorrow. Be well.
Thank you, Bob. Until tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?